Grab a seat. Grab a seat. We have some questions overflowing since last week. There we go. Is there a line between healthy and unhealthy boundaries, or is there no line? There definitely is a line. You know, when it comes to having healthy boundaries and having boundaries that may be over excessive, which is how I'm interpreting that question. There's a place where, you know, you have healthy boundaries for your life, and then you have boundaries in your life that are just extra. You don't actually need them. There's something that's actually not necessarily healthy for you. You're just being excessive, and it's not something that actually is keeping you safe from something that's a danger to you, you know? And so there are, places where you could make, decisions where you have excessive boundaries, so definitely important to kind of recognize what those might be. But along with that, when it comes to unhealthy boundaries, that could also be interpreted in the way, at least the way I'm reading the question, is just having a boundary that's not good. Having a boundary that's not, it's kind of like when you're driving on the highway, the guardrail, if you look at where the guardrail is placed, it's placed at a specific distance. They have bylaws and they have standards that the city requires for proper transportation, for safe transportation. It's like taking that guardrail and actually, going past that safe, space away from the edge of the road or a bridge or whatever. That's what an unhealthy boundary would be. It's gonna be a boundary or a guardrail that's actually not doing its job. And so typically ask yourself, if I have a boundary in place but it's actually not protecting me, it's not guiding me properly, it's not guarding me properly, it's not it's not doing those things, it's not a good boundary. It's not doing what it's supposed to do, which is protect you. Say in a relationship, if you have a boundary when it comes to physical intimacy, right? And you find yourself constantly crossing that boundary, maybe it's because you don't have a strong enough boundary. Maybe it's because you actually aren't holding up that boundary strong enough. So you have to do some self-assessment there. You got to figure out what that is. But yeah, it could definitely be the case where, you do have an unhealthy boundary or just an excessive one, and you got to figure that out. So there definitely is a line in that. So good question.
We got a good one about today's topic.
Sure.
It says, what do I do if I have a friend that keeps trying to be in my changers circle, but I consider them and want them to stay in my buddies circle? So somebody who wants to be closer and thinks that they're closer maybe, and you are like, I'm setting a boundary and I want them to stay at that stage, at the buddy stage.
Yeah, you know what? This is that hard conversation that you gotta have. This is the and there's a way to be able to communicate that without going, I don't like you, you're not nice, you suck, or whatever the fears, right? That we are thinking that person's probably going to think of us. There's a way to communicate that, and so it depends situation to situation. So I can't just give you a generic answer because I don't want to give you, a bad example that's not pertinent to your situation.
I think one of the things I would want to know is what that relationship currently looks like. Like, how often do you spend time together? What do you do when you spend time together? When you spend time together, and are you opening up and sharing things that are personal to you? Are they asking you to open up and share things that are personal to you? And how do you respond in those situations? Because some of those things could actually give that person a clue without you having to necessarily have a conversation, depending on how you've handled the situation thus far, right? So if that person is constantly they do ask you and they do try to get you to open up, and they do share and open up on their end, and you're reciprocating and you are responding and you're being open with them, then no wonder they think that they have that space to be a changer in your life. So maybe it is a space where you can either respond minimally or just be like, I don't feel comfortable discussing that. I don't want to talk about it. And that kind of also creates the space and sets some boundaries in your relationship, where you're like, this is the level of closeness that I'm allowing in the space. Again, time is a factor too. If you're hanging out with them super frequently, they might just assume that they're your best buddy and you guys are best buddies because of the fact that they spend so much time with you. And so maybe it's a space where you're like, okay, this is because of whatever reason, like maybe you're like, this is not a good relationship for me. I'm going to cut back on some of the time that I'm spending with them so that we can create some of that space that I think is healthy for me in this relationship.
Yeah, that's good. And is it possible for two people to stop loving one another? And then the person put a bracket, fall out of love. That's where the question goes downhill, guys. Come on. In future or after years of marriage? First part of that question, is it possible for two people to stop loving one another? Yes. It is for sure possible for two people to stop loving one another. In fact, oftentimes when two people go, we don't feel the love, we don't feel the chemistry, I feel like I just did this. They're falling, it's not they're falling out of love, they've chosen to stop loving each other intentionally. And so, absolutely it's possible. The idea of, but can they fall out of love in like future years after marriage? Yeah, if people don't intentionally make a choice to love their spouse, to connect with their spouse, to commit to their spouse, to give to their spouse, absolutely. They can stop loving them, hence why they don't feel the love.
Yeah, most of the time when people say that they've fallen out of love, what they're really saying is that they've lost some of that initial passion that they had at the beginning of the relationship. And it's natural for that passion to kind of diminish as like life happens and as things kind of come our way and hardships happen and fights happen and we change and we grow and maybe our partner isn't changing and growing with us.
Yeah.
Like that could happen. That's very possible. But it's also like your job to try to recapture some of that passion and also your job to continue to love without the passion. Like you can't be like, okay, I've lost that passion, and even if you've tried to recapture that passion, you're like, I'm trying to like keep things like loving and fun and whatever, and it's not possible. It's not working. My partner's not meeting me where I'm at. I still have to choose to love.
I thought what you were going to say actually there, which is true, was what I said in my head when you started it. When you say that you've really fallen out of love, what you're really saying is you're not worth the work. You're not worth the work anymore. What you're really saying is you're not worth the work that I need to put in to keep loving you anymore. So I have fallen out of love. It's not really that you've fallen; it's you've chosen. And so I think it's important to recognize when you get to that place, it's because something has happened, and it's not never oh, it just, the feelings. No. It's intentional. It's an action or an inaction. It was something that happened, and you need to go back. You need to figure that out, and you need to start working on that, especially if you're like, and as the question poses, if you're married, if you're, someone who's like, years down in, and even if this is, one of you years into marriage, and you're like, why is it that I don't feel? Why don't I feel that? And it might be because of life, because of business, things just got out of hand.